Welcome back, guys, to Blackout War Stories. 57% of you still haven't subscribed. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. Thank you. October 1997, Nevada Test and Training Range, 0140 hours. The desert was still. No insects, no wind. Only the slow grind of our Humvee tires over powdered dust. The moon had gone behind low cloud, leaving the flats in muted shadow. I watched the instruments more than the road. The compass needle drifted 2 degrees off true north, then held. Static flickered through the radio net, short bursts like breathing. The red light from the map board painted the cabin in a weak pulse that seemed to sync with the static. The air smelled of metal and ozone. Sergeant Reeves kept the vehicle steady at 20. My right hand stayed on the case that held the spectrum analyzer, powered down until we hit the first site. Its casing vibrated faintly, like a small motor running inside. It wasn't supposed to do that when off. At 0147, the perimeter beacon ahead blinked twice, paused, then blinked again in the wrong sequence. Reeves cut the engine. Silence filled the cab. Out past the windshield, the desert surface seemed to shimmer, not with heat, but something colder, duller. That was our first clear sign that the call out tonight was not routine. 0120 hours. We had rolled out from the north gate at Groom. The convoy was just 2 vehicles. Our Humvee led, with Reeves driving and me on instruments. Behind us was a small flatbed, carrying a tech from telemetry and a mechanic from power systems. Both wore standard issue gear, but no patches. None of us used names on the radio, only call signs. Our assignment came down earlier that evening. One of the remote sensor relays at Site Bravo 4 had started sending corrupted packets. The report said power fluctuations and ghost signals. That language usually meant nothing serious. Static discharge, heat expansion, or dust buildup on connectors. But this time the signal came with a pattern that did not match any system we had on record. Range Command wanted the unit recovered before the next flight test window. They wanted it done at night, no daylight movement. That alone told me it was part of something black. We were used to that. Groom worked on projects that never left the ground in daylight. I had been at Groom for 6 months. Before that, I spent 3 years in security forces at Edwards. Out there, you guarded hangars and watched the horizon for joyriders with cameras. At Groom, you didn't look up unless told to. You memorized routes, checkpoints, and radio procedures. You kept your eyes on what was in front of you. Reeves had served longer. Quiet man, always smoked his ration cigarette at the same time each shift, never spoke about home. He had a scar under his chin from a rotor accident. Said little, did everything by checklist. We carried standard sidearms, 2 M4s, and an infrared scope. The real tool tonight was the spectrum analyzer packed in a foam-lined case beside me. It tracked power anomalies and signal spikes. It had been tested against every platform we knew. If it caught something new, it logged it automatically. The desert around Groom looks empty on the map. In truth, it's full of sensors, cameras, buried lines, and test rigs. Even the sand is wired. You can drive 10 miles and never see a post, but a radar dome 2 ridges away will know your speed. By 0130, we had cleared the last checkpoint. The radio net was quiet except for short test calls. We kept headlights off using night vision goggles. The desert reflected faint starlight, enough to follow the track by its pale lines. At 0140, we reached the first relay point. The small tower stood 8 feet tall, marked with a single coded stencil. The beacon was supposed to blink in a fixed pattern. Tonight, it blinked wrong. 2 short, 1 long. That sequence belonged to no system we used. Reeves parked at a safe distance and killed the lights. We stepped out. The air was cold, dry, sharp in the throat. Every sound carried far. My boots sank slightly in the powder. I checked the perimeter with the infrared scope. The ground looked clean, no footprints or heat sources. The relay box sat on a tripod base. Cables ran from it into the ground. The power indicator glowed steady amber. That meant standby mode. I crouched, brushed the dust from the data port, and connected the handheld diagnostic. The readout scrolled nonsense symbols as if the buffer had overwritten itself. Reeves circled the tower, keeping his rifle at low ready. He called out distance marks in short numbers. Everything normal until he reached the far side. He stopped. I turned my headlamp that way. A small patch of ground looked darker than the rest, as if the surface had melted and set again. The glassed area was circular, about a foot wide. The tech from the flatbed came up behind us. He said nothing, just crouched beside the patch and ran a probe over it. The device beeped twice, reading residual charge. He checked the time on his watch and nodded, meaning he logged it. We stayed there for 10 minutes, recording readings and sealing the relay in a protective case. The static on the radio cleared up for a few seconds, then returned with short bursts that almost formed a rhythm. Reeves glanced at me. I shrugged. At Groom, equipment often talked to itself. When we loaded the relay onto the flatbed, I looked once more at the sky. The clouds had thinned. A pale streak cut across the stars, silent, fast, and gone before I could track it. Not a satellite, not any plane I knew. That was the moment the air changed. It wasn't sound or temperature. More like the weight of the night shifted slightly. Reeves felt it too. He didn't say a word, just nodded toward the truck. Time to move to the next site. We moved out slow, keeping radio chatter to a minimum. The tech rode in back with the relay case strapped down beside him. I watched the instrument panel. The compass stayed steady this time. The air felt heavier, colder than before. Out here, even a 1-degree temperature drop meant the weather was shifting, but this didn't feel like weather. 200 hours. We reached the second checkpoint, a low rise marked on our map as Ridgeline 6. Beyond it, the ground opened into a wide basin, flat as glass. That's where the backup relay stood, tied to a power unit buried under 3 feet of gravel. It linked to an uplink mast that passed test telemetry back to the control center. We had run this same route 2 weeks earlier. Everything then was quiet. Tonight, the same area felt wrong. No movement, no animal tracks, no air noise. Even the hum from the power unit was gone. Normally, you could hear it through the soil if you crouched. Tonight, nothing. Reeves parked the Humvee about 20 yards from the mast. He left the engine idling low and checked the horizon with his night scope. I stepped out and looked at the tower. The strobe at the top blinked once, then froze mid-flash, as if someone had pressed pause. Then it resumed, but off rhythm. 2 blinks, a pause, then one more. Same as the first tower. The tech muttered under his breath, said it looked like the relay was copying the same fault. I didn't answer. Instead, I took out my field book, a small black notebook. I wrote the time, the temperature, and a quick line about the blinking pattern. I kept that notebook for myself, not for reports. Personal record, no names, no unit ID. At Groom, every man had a job and only a small piece of the full picture. That's how it stayed secure. You didn't ask about the other pieces. If something strange happened, you logged what you saw, you turned it in, and that was the end of it. The ones who asked questions never lasted long. I had seen odd things before. Heat mirages that looked like vehicles, lights that changed color too fast to be aircraft. Once, a whole radar dome went down because of a ground fault that never repeated. Every time someone above us filed it as a system glitch, that word covered everything. We moved to the relay base. I opened the access panel and found the circuit board had small scorch marks near the connectors, but the dust on the inside was untouched. No heat spread. Impossible. I took a photo with the service camera and closed it up. Reeves stayed on the radio trying to raise range control. Nothing but static. He switched channels twice. No response. The mechanic checked the power generator, said the ground voltage was reading higher than normal, but the output line was dead. It was as if the energy was trapped in the soil. 10 hours. The tech's handheld meter beeped twice, then shut off by itself. He tapped the screen. No power. Reeves called it. We packed up and prepared to move to the backup unit at the edge of the basin, about half a mile east. Command hadn't cleared that yet, but without comms, we followed standing orders. Secure and recover all linked equipment. We started across the basin. The sand turned smoother there, more like fine powder. Our boots left prints that seemed to fade behind us within minutes. The mechanic noticed first. He looked back, said the ground was swallowing the marks. I turned and saw it too. The wind hadn't picked up, but the prints were gone. We stopped once to listen. Far off, across the flats, a single low rumble came and went. Could have been thunder, but the sky showed no flash. The sound felt more like it came from under the ground. Reeves said nothing. He checked his watch, nodded, and kept walking. I followed, keeping one hand on the case. The air was dry, my throat raw from breathing dust. The desert stretched empty in every direction, a pale surface under a thin moon. When we reached the backup unit, I noticed the power cables were loose, half buried like something had lifted the ground and set it back down. The panel showed no light at all. Dead system. The tech knelt beside it, opened his toolkit, and froze. The screws around the access hatch were already turned halfway out, like someone had been here hours before us. He looked at Reeves. Reeves looked at me. We didn't speak. We all felt the same thing. Someone or something had reached the site before our arrival. That realization stayed with me when I switched on the spectrum analyzer. The screen glowed bright green, then showed a spike unlike any normal frequency pattern. It pulsed slow and steady, same rhythm as the beacons. Reeves called for a perimeter. I checked my watch. 0220 hours. 0220 hours. We spread out around the backup relay. Reeves took the north arc. The tech stayed on the equipment. I circled south, scanning through my night scope. The air was calm, the kind of still that makes your heartbeat sound too loud. I kept one eye on the analyzer. The green line pulsed steady at first, then started climbing and falling in clean steps, like someone turning a knob with exact timing. I noted each interval in my field book. Every pulse hit at 8-second gaps. That kind of precision didn't happen from weather or faulty wiring. Reeves came over, said he felt a light vibration in the ground, barely there, but constant. I crouched, placed a hand on the dirt. He was right. It was like standing near heavy machinery running deep underground. But there was nothing out here except us. The tech tried to open the relay panel, but the screws wouldn't budge. He switched to a stronger bit, tried again. They gave way all at once, like something had been holding them from the inside. He froze for a moment, then lifted the lid. Inside, the wiring was clean, too clean. Every connector looked new, like it had just been installed. He turned to me and whispered that this relay had already been replaced. That made no sense. Command had listed this unit as operational for 3 months without maintenance. No flight line team had clearance to touch it without range security present. I checked the case number on the panel. The stenciling was faded but readable. The last digit didn't match the one on our manifest. It had been changed from a 3 to a 6, scratched in by hand. Someone had swapped hardware without updating the log. Reeves told us to keep working, but stay alert. His voice stayed level, same as always. But I could tell by how tight his jaw looked that he felt it too. The analyzer beeped again, a sharp tone this time, not the soft clicks from before. The waveform flattened, then spiked high enough to hit the limit line. The numbers locked at a value I had never seen, far beyond our normal range. I wrote it down. The spike lasted 4 seconds, then stopped. We ran a grounding check. No surge, no static. The dirt around the tower felt colder than the air. My glove frosted at the fingertips when I brushed the base plate. I pulled back quick. The metal read below, freezing, but the thermometer said the air was still above 40 degrees. We disconnected the relay and sealed it in a recovery bag. The tech clipped on the tag, logged the time. I closed the analyzer and stowed it. Everything looked normal again. No vibration, no sound. Then the light on the mast blinked once more. Bright white this time, not the usual amber. It stayed on longer, maybe 3 seconds. When it faded, the basin seemed darker than before. Reeves keyed the radio. Range control, this is Bravo 24, confirm relay recovered, requesting update on inbound support vehicle. Static answered. Then for less than half a second, we heard a burst of clear tone. 3 high notes, 1 low, then silence. The tech looked at me. I shook my head. That signal wasn't ours. We decided to load the relay and head back to Ridgeline 6 to regain line of sight. The flatbed started first. Its tires kicked up dust that hung in the air too long, not moving even when the Humvee rolled forward. Reeves noticed. He slowed down, waiting for the cloud to drift. It didn't. It hung like fog, solid silver gray in the headlights. We drove through it. Inside, visibility dropped to a few feet. The dust looked metallic, glittering when caught in the red dash light. The radio picked up soft background hum again, low and constant. Reeves kept both hands on the wheel, following the compass more than the road. Then in the middle of that fog, the compass needle spun once, a full circle, then stopped dead on zero. Reeves cursed under his breath and kept driving. I logged the time, 0231 hours. We cleared the fog after about 30 seconds. When it faded, the air was clean again. But the radio hum stayed. The analyzer case began to shake faintly against my leg, same way it had earlier when powered down. I turned to the tech on the flatbed behind us. He gave a thumbs up through the window, but his eyes looked wide. The relay in the back had started to blink through the sealed bag. That wasn't possible. The unit had no power source of its own. We decided to stop at the next high point and check it. Reeves didn't speak. He just nodded once, like he had already made peace with the fact that whatever was happening, we weren't turning back yet. The engine kept a low rumble as the truck climbed the rise. The analyzer's vibration grew stronger. It felt like something was moving closer beneath the ground. That was the moment when everything quieted again, too sudden to be natural. The hum stopped. The compass settled. The air stilled. We reached the top of the ridge, headlights cutting across the flats. Reeves stopped the truck and stared ahead. About half a mile away, where the backup site had been, a soft light glowed from the ground. It wasn't from any beacon we had. 0235 hours. We sat there on the ridge, engines off, watching the light. It came from the same spot where the relay had been. It wasn't fire, and it wasn't an aircraft flare. It stayed too steady, almost like a low dome of white under the surface. The light pulsed once, faint but clean, then again. Same 8-second rhythm as before. The analyzer case on my lap trembled each time it flashed. Reeves leaned forward, elbows on the wheel, eyes fixed on that glow. He didn't talk. None of us did. The radio crackled once, a half word we couldn't make out, then went quiet again. The desert was so still it felt like we were inside a sealed room. The tech wanted to go back and check it. Reeves said no. He told him we'd stay here, log readings and wait for orders. I powered the analyzer back on, even though it wasn't protocol. The screen came alive with noise. Not random noise, but a clean pattern, stepped and repeated. Every pulse matched the flashes. At 0240 hours, the light stopped. The analyzer flatlined. For 5 full seconds, there was nothing. Then the ground under the Humvee gave a faint shudder, enough to make the coffee in my thermos ripple. The tech grabbed the rear handle and shouted that the relay in the flatbed had powered on by itself. I jumped out and ran to him. The relay lights blinked through the recovery bag, same white tone as the glow in the distance. The cables we'd disconnected now gave off a weak hum. I checked the bag for leaks, none. The case read cold to touch again, frost forming at the seams. I wrote the time and noted the temperature drop. Reeves got on the radio again, this time using emergency frequency. Still nothing. He tried the secondary channel, same result. Only a thin static hiss, steady and calm, almost too regular to be random. We waited another minute. Then the light at the site blinked again, brighter than before. Not like a lamp, more like a surface reflecting something that wasn't there a second ago. The tech stepped closer to the edge of the ridge to get a better look. Reeves called him back, voice firm but quiet. He didn't move. He kept watching. Then he froze. His shoulders stiffened. I asked what he saw. He said nothing for a few seconds, then said in a low voice, "There's movement in the light." I raised my binoculars, hard to focus through the distance, but I saw something shift across that glow. Not a figure, not clear. More like a shadow crossing underwater. Smooth, wide, slow. The light dimmed as if it was being covered from within. When it came back, the shadow was gone. Reeves ordered us back inside the vehicles. We started the engines, planning to pull away and circle north to the fallback point. But when Reeves turned the wheel, the compass on the dash spun again, faster this time, then stopped dead on west. The GPS screen went black. We could still see the ridge markers though, so Reeves drove blind by memory. After a few hundred meters, the radio burst alive, just one sharp tone followed by a clear voice. It said, "Bravo 24, hold position. Do not proceed further." Then silence. The voice didn't sound like anyone from our command. Too flat, no static fade, no call sign confirmation. Reeves stared at me. I switched channels and called range control. No answer. Switched back to the emergency net. Dead again. The tech whispered that maybe someone was relaying the message through our equipment. The idea didn't make sense, but he was right that the signal shouldn't have reached us that clean with all the interference. We stopped again and killed the lights. The desert returned to darkness, only the stars above and the pale outline of the dry basin ahead. For a few minutes, nothing moved. Then off to the east, a single red point rose slow into the sky. No sound, no blinking, just a faint climb straight up until it faded. Reeves turned off the ignition and sat still, hands on the wheel, eyes forward. He said in a quiet voice, "We're not alone out here tonight." The analyzer beeped once more and printed a new pattern. This time the pulse gaps had shortened to 6 seconds. I logged the data and closed the notebook. The air inside the Humvee felt thick, as if the oxygen level had dropped. Reeves cracked the window slightly, then shut it fast. The outside air smelled like burned copper. We didn't move after that. We waited for something to change. At 0300 hours, it did. The light in the basin vanished completely, and a faint hum came through the ground again, moving toward us like a slow wave. That was when we realized whatever had been down there was now moving our way. 0300 hours. The hum grew stronger, steady like a slow engine deep under the dirt. Reeves told me to power up the analyzer again. I did. The display came alive, this time showing a smooth wave moving across every band, like something was pushing a signal wall through the ground. We sat in silence, listening. The sound was faint but constant, coming closer. The tech in the back kept one hand on the relay bag. It had started to shake again. I saw his knuckles white under his gloves. Then everything changed at once. The headlights blinked on by themselves, bright and blinding. The engine wasn't running, yet the lights stayed on. Reeves reached for the switch, but it didn't respond. He hit the main kill breaker. The lights cut out, the dash went black, and the radio spat a single burst of code. I caught part of it. 4 digits repeated twice. 1472, then silence. That was not any code we used. The tech shouted that the relay's indicator had switched to active transmit. It shouldn't have been possible. The bag was sealed. It had no power. Yet the transmit light glowed red, steady, like it was sending something. I grabbed the field meter and pointed it at the bag. The needle jumped full scale, pegged at max. Reeves ordered me to disconnect it completely. I pulled the bag open and unplugged the internal cable. The moment I did, the light went out and the hum faded. For a few seconds, it felt normal again. Then the analyzer alarmed. The signal was back, stronger. It spread across every band, blocking out our own systems. On the screen, I saw new data writing itself over the old files. The same 12-second loop, copied over and over. Reeves looked at me. "What's it doing?" I said it was recording us. He didn't respond. He just stared at the screen, jaw tight. Then without warning, the radio came alive again. This time with voices. Ours. Recorded from minutes earlier. Reeves asking for range control. My voice giving the readings. The system was playing it back. Perfect timing. Same tone, same pauses. We all froze. The playback ran for about 30 seconds, then stopped. Static again. Reeves finally spoke. "We're leaving. Now." We started the engine and turned toward the northern road. The hum in the ground returned, faster now like it was chasing us. I watched the analyzer. It pulsed higher with every 100 yards. 0315 hours. The sky ahead glowed faintly. Not dawn, more like static light, pale and wide. Reeves slowed the Humvee. The flatbed behind us kept close. The tech called out that his gauges were going wild. I looked through the back window. The relay bag was glowing from the inside. Soft blue this time, not white. The frost on the case melted and steamed in the cold air. Reeves stopped again. We both got out, weapons slung low. The air felt charged, hair rising on the skin. Then from behind us came a low rumble. No engine, more like the ground itself groaning. The flatbed driver yelled something and pointed up. Over the ridge, something moved through the haze. At first, I thought it was an aircraft, But there was no noise, no navigation lights. It was darker than the sky, sharp-edged, gliding without thrust. It hovered for a few seconds, then vanished. No streak, no fade, just gone. Reeves lowered his rifle and said in a quiet voice, "That's one of ours." But I could tell he didn't believe it. The hum in the ground stopped. Everything went still. The compass on the dash fixed again, pointing north. The analyzer cleared to zero signal. We waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Then a new sound came through the radio. Not a voice, not static. More like a slow breathing pattern, mechanical and deep. It filled the cabin for 20 seconds, then ended with one faint click. Immediately after, the backup relay bag blinked again. This time, instead of transmitting, it displayed a single line of text across its internal diagnostic screen. "Sequence complete." The tech read it aloud. Reeves and I looked at each other. We both knew what that meant. The system had finished whatever it was doing. He got on the radio again, voice steady. "Range control, this is Bravo 2-4. We are aborting mission. Returning to base with recovered equipment. We have multiple equipment malfunctions and possible interference. Confirm copy." Silence, then a single voice replied, calm, clipped. "Copy. Bravo 2-4. Proceed north to Point Echo 7. Do not stop. Maintain comms discipline." Reeves looked puzzled. There was no Point Echo 7 on our map. He asked for repeat. The voice came again, identical tone. "Do not stop. Maintain comms discipline." That was the last transmission we heard that night. We followed the road north, quiet, eyes on the horizon. No more light, no hum, just the dry rattle of gravel under tires. But inside the Humvee, the relay case kept ticking, one pulse every 8 seconds. I checked it twice. Power off, no battery, still ticking. We reached the edge of the restricted zone around 0400 hours. The dawn line was just showing on the mountains. Reeves logged the exit time, said we'd turn in the gear, write the report, and never speak about the rest. He said it like an order. That ticking stayed in my head the entire ride back. We crossed back into the main access route just before sunrise. The sky was a flat gray. Reeves drove silent. The tech sat in the back seat staring at the relay case like it might start moving again. I kept watching the horizon in the rear mirror. Nothing followed, but the sense of being watched stayed. By the time we reached the first checkpoint, the guards were already outside waiting. They looked tense. One of them motioned for us to cut the engine. The other called over the radio. No smiles, no small talk. A senior officer from Range Command arrived a few minutes later. He didn't ask what happened. He just told us to unload the relay, leave the analyzer, and report straight to debriefing. His voice was calm, but I could hear something behind it, like he already knew. Inside the debrief room, they had set up recording equipment. No windows, one table, 3 chairs. Reeves sat in the middle, me on his right, the tech across from us. The officer stood the whole time. He asked us to describe everything in order. Reeves gave the straight version: movement, interference, recovery, communication loss, return. No mention of the glow, or the playback, or the voice on the net. Just the facts we could prove. When it was my turn, I followed his lead. I listed signal spikes, instrument readings, power faults, left out what I'd seen on the ridge. The officer nodded, said we'd submit equipment and rest. He told us to write the incident as a power feedback loop. That was the phrase he used. They took our watches, radios, and notebooks, except my small field book. That one stayed in my pocket. I kept it shut the whole time. After the debrief, they sent us to the barracks to sleep. None of us did. The tech sat on his bunk staring at the floor. Reeves cleaned his rifle without reason. I lay awake listening to the hum of the air vent, trying to decide if it matched the pattern from the basin. It didn't, but it was close enough to make my chest tighten. Later that afternoon, an escort came for the relay. 2 men in plain coveralls loaded it into a covered truck. No unit markings. They signed the manifest and drove off toward the restricted hangars. That evening, Command called a short briefing. They said we'd done good work, recovered valuable test hardware, and prevented a delay in operations. Then they reminded us of our clearance agreements. No discussions outside authorized channels. Standard phrase. After that, routine resumed. at least on paper. But things weren't the same. The range air had changed. You could feel it walking to post at night. Every guard tower had new radio checks, new grounding rules, extra gear. Someone higher up had taken what happened seriously, even if they wouldn't say it out loud. 3 nights later, Reeves and I were sent to patrol the same sector again. Different route, but same terrain. The tech was reassigned to telemetry inside the hangar. He didn't argue. The desert was calm that night, cleaner air, no static. Still, I watched the analyzer's readings every few minutes. Flatline. Nothing. Halfway through the patrol, Reeves slowed the truck and pointed left. I saw it too. 2 vehicles moving without lights across the far plain. No radio call, no flight notice, no listed convoy. One was a box truck, the other a smaller transport. We pulled over and watched through the scope. They stopped near the basin where we'd been. The box truck's rear door opened. A white flash lit the ground, then darkness again. The vehicles stayed another 10 minutes, then left the way they came. No comms about it, no log. Reeves said, "We never came here." He was right. When we got back to base, he turned in the patrol log and didn't write a word about the trucks. I didn't either. The next morning, the tech was gone. His bunk cleared, name off the roster. I asked the clerk where he went. The answer was short, transferred. No destination listed. I went to the hangar that afternoon just to look. The same officers from that night were there, walking between covered crates. I saw a relay case among them. The frost line was still on the lip. They noticed me watching. One of them walked over, smiled without warmth, and said I should get back to my duty post. That night, when I sat in the truck again with Reeves, he finally spoke. His voice low, steady. Whatever that was, it's not supposed to exist. I asked if he thought it was one of ours. He said nothing, just stared at the ridge until his cigarette burned to the filter. The desert around Groom holds things long after they're gone. The ground doesn't forget heat or pressure. Sometimes I think it remembers us too. That thought stayed with me as the new orders came down. A second patrol, same area, different time. The kind of test that repeats only when command needs to confirm something. And that's when the unknown returned. We rolled out again the next night. Same sector, same route. Reeves drove. I handled the gear. Command said it was a verification sweep. Their words. We both knew what it meant. The sky was clear, colder than before. The stars looked sharp enough to cut. The range lights behind us faded until there was nothing but the road and silence. The Humvee rattled as it hit the uneven dirt. Every sound felt louder in the quiet. Reeves didn't talk much. He kept glancing at the compass. I noticed too, the needle had a slow drift again. Not spinning, just sliding a few degrees every minute. We reached the first relay tower. Everything looked normal. No damage, no glow, no frost. Still, I felt it. That same weight in the air. Like pressure before a storm, only there were no clouds. Reeves killed the engine. We stepped out. I checked the readings. The analyzer came up clean, flat line across the board. I started logging data anyway. It felt wrong to leave blanks. A few minutes passed before it began again. A faint vibration underfoot. Reeves looked at me. I nodded. The sound grew steady, low and even. I checked the analyzer again. The line rose slow, same pattern as before. Then our radios crackled. A clear voice cut through, calm and direct. Bravo 2-4, report your position. Reeves answered with coordinates. The voice came back, same tone. Hold your ground. That was fine until the signal came again. Same words, same voice, but on a different channel. 2 identical transmissions, seconds apart. Reeves froze. He switched both radios off. The silence that followed felt heavy. Then the light appeared. Same as before. Over the basin to the east. A soft glow rising through the sand, spreading wide, colorless. It pulsed every 6 seconds now. Faster. Reeves told me to stay in the truck. He walked a few steps ahead, eyes fixed on the glow. It wasn't bright enough to blind, but it pulled your focus. You couldn't look away once you saw it. I called out, told him to stop. He didn't answer. The analyzer went wild. Every frequency spiked. Numbers scrolled too fast to read. The relay box in the back began to tick again. Same rhythm. 6 seconds. Then something new happened. The truck engine coughed once, even though it was off. The ignition clicked by itself. Lights flashed on for a second, then off. The same moment, the glow in the basin surged bright, white like magnesium. Reeves turned and shouted for me to record. I pointed the camera and zoomed in. The glow wasn't just light, it was movement. The ground seemed to rise in smooth waves, as if something large shifted under it. No dust, no noise. Just slow, fluid motion. Then the radio came back alive with our own voices again. The playback from before, running on both channels. My own voice calling out times, Reeves giving positions. Perfect timing, perfect tone. I unplugged the power line. The sound didn't stop. It wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was coming through the truck speakers, even though the system was off. Reeves yelled for me to cut the main breaker. I pulled it. The sound kept going, fading only when the glow dimmed again. He climbed back into the truck. His face was pale, eyes wide. He said, quiet but firm, "It's not from here." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. The analyzer beeped one final time and shut itself down. Battery drained in seconds. The relay box stopped ticking. The air around us grew warm, almost humid. That shouldn't happen in the desert. Reeves started the engine and turned us north. We didn't wait for orders. We drove straight through the flats, past the old test markers, until we reached the base road. The radio stayed silent. The glow never followed, but the feeling did. The sense that something unseen was still nearby. At the base gate, we met a new guard team. Different faces. They didn't ask for ID, just waved us through. Reeves didn't slow down. When we reached the motor pool, he parked without a word, got out, and walked straight to the command office. I stayed behind and checked the relay box one last time. There was no frost this time, no hum, just one thin line across the diagnostic screen. Words appeared slowly, one at a time. Data received. Then it went dark. I didn't tell Reeves. He came back a few minutes later with a sealed envelope and orders to report to medical for evaluation. He didn't meet my eyes. He just said, "We're done with that sector." I nodded. Neither of us believed it. Later that night, alone in my bunk, I opened my field book and wrote everything I remembered. The lights, the voices, the movement. I wrote until my hand cramped. Then I tore out one page and hid it in the lining of my locker. The next morning, Reeves was gone. Transfer, same as the tech. No forwarding. That's when I realized what this was never meant to be seen, or written, or told. But the desert doesn't erase things that easily. That night, as I walked across the compound, I felt the ground hum under my boots again. Faint, steady, same rhythm as before. The next few days passed slow. The base stayed quiet, but not calm. You could feel something under the surface. Officers moved between hangars at odd hours. Trucks came and went without markings. New antennas went up near the south fence. Nobody said why. I kept to routine. Guard duty, radio checks, paperwork, everything by the book. But the pattern had changed. We all felt it. Reeves's bunk stayed empty. His nameplate was removed the next morning. When I asked about him, the shift sergeant said, "Training assignment," then changed the subject. Same line they'd used for the tech. During one briefing, command mentioned a communications blackout test. That was the official phrase for what had happened. They said the incident was caused by experimental signal equipment from a joint program. Temporary interference, no security breach. Every man in the room knew it wasn't that simple. Still, nobody spoke. I tried to forget it. Nights were long, and the hum sometimes returned when the generator kicked on. I'd feel it in the floor, just for a second, same rhythm. I told myself it was memory. One afternoon, I was called to the comms building. 2 officers waited inside. One wore civilian clothes, the other had no name tag. They asked about my notes. I said I'd turn them in. That was true except for the one small field book. They didn't ask again. The civilians signed a form and dismissed me. When I stepped outside, a flatbed truck passed, heading toward the restricted hangars. I saw the same case strapped under a tarp, the one with the frost. The corner still showed the scratch where the stencil number had been changed. That night I went to the perimeter fence. The desert stretched quiet and empty. The wind had picked up, sharp against my face. The ridge where we'd seen the light looked calm again, just another dark line against the stars. I stayed out there for almost an hour. Nothing moved, no glow, no hum, just cold air and open silence. For a moment I started to believe maybe we'd imagined it. Then a small light blinked once near the horizon. Not bright, just a tiny flash. One, pause, one, same pattern as before. I watched until it faded. The next morning we got new orders. Our detachment would rotate out within a week. Fresh crew inbound. I didn't argue. Before I packed, I opened the field book one last time. The pages were covered in short notes, numbers, patterns, sketches of the relay towers. At the bottom of the last page, I'd written a line half asleep the night it happened. Something under the ground knows we were there. I read it twice, then tore the page out and burned it in a coffee can behind the barracks. The rest I locked away in my duffel. When we left Groom, no one said goodbye. No ceremony, no handshakes. Just a list of transfers and a bus waiting on the tarmac. I sat by the window and looked back once. The desert shimmered under the sun, flat and harmless. But I knew better. That ground had a memory. Everything that had happened out there was recorded somewhere. Maybe in the files, maybe in the soil itself. I never saw Reeves again. I never found the tech's name in any registry. But every few months, I'd read a quiet report about electromagnetic interference or telemetry failure near Groom. Different teams, same pattern. It always ended the same way. Case closed, no public release. Even years later, that rhythm still came back sometimes when I was near heavy equipment. The low hum, steady, quiet, familiar. I could almost time it. 6 seconds. Pause. 6 seconds. And every time it happened, I thought of that night in the basin. The glow under the sand, and the feeling that something was listening. I was reassigned to Edwards for a short time, then to a smaller post in Utah. The work was normal gates, patrols, flight line security, nothing like Groom. Still, the habit stayed. I kept a notebook. I logged every odd reading, every flicker of light that didn't match the sky. Most of it was nothing, but writing helped. A few months later, an officer from the range came through on inspection. I recognized his face from Groom. He saw me in the hall, nodded once, then kept walking. No words, but that one look told me everything. They still remembered. They still watched. That night I couldn't sleep. The air felt heavier again. Same pressure I'd felt before the hum started in the desert. The base was quiet, just the low drone of distant aircraft. I lay there counting seconds. When I reached 6, the lights flickered once and stopped. It might have been coincidence. It didn't feel like one. The next day I checked the duty logs. A maintenance team had reported short radio interference at the same time. The note said, "Brief atmospheric anomaly." The phrase made me smile a little. Same words, different base. After that, I stopped mentioning things. The Air Force has a way of closing files that don't fit. I focused on my job, followed procedure, and kept my mouth shut. Years passed. I moved through other assignments. Bases changed, uniforms updated, new recruits came and went. The desert faded to memory, but sometimes it found its way back in small flashes. A vibration underfoot, a quick static pulse through a radio. The kind of signs you'd only notice if you'd lived through it once. One year, while stationed at Nellis, I met a contractor who had done test work near the same sector. He said nothing specific, just mentioned how some sites mess with compasses. I didn't push, I just nodded. The look in his eyes said he'd seen something too. Not long after, I took a trip up north. Drove through Nevada again, same highways, same pale light. I passed the dirt road leading toward Groom. The old sign still read, "No trespassing." Use of deadly force authorized. The paint was newer, but the wind carried the same dry dust. I parked for a few minutes and just watched the horizon. The land was flat, empty, quiet. Nothing moved. Still, there was something in that silence, a weight you could almost feel pressing from the ground up. Before I left, I thought about Reeves and the tech, how both disappeared without a word. I used to think maybe they'd been reassigned. Now I'm not sure. Sometimes I wonder if whatever was under that basin marked us somehow, not with scars, not with signals, but in a way that stays buried until the right moment. I never went back to Groom. Never even tried. Some places don't want to be found again, but the pattern never left me. Every once in a while, I'll be near machinery or hear a generator hum, and that same rhythm comes back. 6 seconds. Pause. 6 seconds. Always exact. I've tried to explain it to a few people, quietly without names or dates. Most think it's just an old soldier's story. Maybe they're right. Still, I know what I felt in that desert. The ground wasn't dead. It was alive with something we didn't understand. Something that knew when we were there and when we left. And even now, when I close my eyes at night, I see that glow rising through the sand again, spreading out in perfect rhythm, like the desert itself breathing. That image never fades. It's as clear as the day it happened. And deep down, I know we didn't find it. It found us. It's been more than 20 years now. I'm out of uniform, living quiet. Most days are simple. Coffee, a short walk, the same routine. You learn to build a calm life after service. But some nights, when the air is still, the desert comes back. I don't mean in dreams. I mean in memory. Clear and sharp. The cold dust. The soft hum. The feeling that the world had paused to listen. People ask what Groom was like. I tell them the truth that fits in a sentence. It was quiet, secret, and heavier than anywhere else I've stood. I don't talk about what we saw. I tried once, years ago. The person just nodded and smiled the way people do when they think you're talking about stress or heat stroke. Maybe it was stress, maybe not. What I know is that the instruments didn't lie. The readings were real. The frost on the relay, the playback of our voices, the light under the ground. Those things happened, and if they happened once, they could happen again. I still have that one page from my field book. The rest I destroyed. The page is yellow now, the ink faded, but the line is still clear. Something under the ground knows we were there. Sometimes I unfold it, look at the words, and feel that same pressure in the chest that I felt that night, like the air holding its breath. I've told myself I'm done thinking about it, but when I drive through Nevada, I can't help but glance toward the old restricted hills. The signs look the same. The silence feels the same. And once, not long ago, while waiting at a rest stop west of Rachel, I felt it again. A faint vibration under my boots. Soft even, 6 seconds. Pause, 6 seconds. I didn't look back. I just got in the truck and drove. Whatever we woke up that night never went away. It's still out there, buried under sand and orders, running its own rhythm. And I know one day someone else will feel it too. The desert always remembers. Don't turn off the light now. If the story chilled you, subscribe to Blackout War Stories. And for more horror, the next nightmares are waiting on your screen.